good morning, or night, or evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. Currently, I'm working on a skirt, and what I'm doing right now is I am removing little bits of lint and hair and dust before I start painting. What I'll be doing first is I'll be adding a base coat, a layer of white on top of all the areas I want to paint. And then I'll go back for a second layer of that. And after that, I will go back and start coloring. I've been working on this skirt for a while. A few months. I think that I originally started it a few years ago, but then it sat in the drawer forever and ever until now. Well, I say until now, but realistically what I mean is until a few months ago. I tend to work on embroidery projects on the train, or maybe when I'm having trouble with focusing on writing or comics or any of that, and I just need something that I can do very, very repetitively, straightforward, low stakes. I didn't sleep much last night. I always have trouble falling asleep when there's rain or snow, hail, any type of storm, any type of precipitation. It's not necessarily the noise. I think it's something with the atmosphere, maybe the barometric pressure. Creates a sort of restlessness. What I do is I go around the edges, pulling the paint inwards, and then once I finish with that, I'll fill in the whole thing. I try to keep it fairly even. Paint does have shape to it. It's not the same as digital art, where everything is just size and density. Paint takes up space, so when you have lumps of it, it creates a form on the fabric, which can be to your advantage and is part of the charm, but it's not typically ideal for a base coat. I didn't always do base coats for fabric paint. This is more of a recent thing that I've been doing. Because with very absorbent fabrics, which is pretty much every fabric that I've been using anyways, the paint sinks in, right? So some of the color gets lost to the color of the fabric. And when it dries, it might not sit on top the same way that it did when you were painting it. When you first do this layer of white, it helps everything come out more dense, more vibrant, less of the fabric shines through. That is not to say that you should always do this. Sometimes I do monochrome pieces pieces that match the tone, not the tone, match the hue of the fabric, right? Like blue paint on blue jeans, gray paint on a gray jacket, in which case the original fabric can be treated less as a color and more as a value, as a way of shading or lightening whatever you're working on. And in that case, you don't necessarily need these base paints, because then the fabric itself becomes a sort of paint. It's also nice to have the texture of the fabric more in the art, woven through it, blended into it. That's why for, let's say for example, something on black fabric, since I'm using black fabric, I would much rather leave empty space than paint a black line on top. I was not originally planning a swirl for this star, but since I am planning it on other stars, and I wouldn't particularly mind keeping it here, I am going to test it out. I am, for the most part, planning for this to be the last step. Well, the last few steps, because I'm going to have to go back and paint this a few times. But planning for this to be the last few steps in the skirt, but I will probably be going back later to add hotfix gems. I love adding gems. I guess glitter in general, sparkles in general. Though I feel like that's a bit cliche to say. Then again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the cliche. I think I may have cut a bit too far into the spiral on that. That's fine. It's all a learning process. You don't necessarily know how you want to do something until you've done it 1,000 times. And even then you might change your mind. Or not be sure. There are very few things in life that I am sure about. But it is kind of hard to define truth. And even then, I don't think I'm really defining truth. It's just desire. The things that I want and the way that I want to live. And everything else is a bit of a muddied space. I think most people are like that. Though I can't really say how aware everyone is of it. Can't really get a census on the inside of everyone's head. Send out a giant Google Doc form. What is it like to be you? That would be the dream. But I guess that's just what talking to people is. You know? What is it like to be you? What is the person you have been, and how much of it is left? How much change was for the best? How much change is for change's sake? How do you feel the passage of time? How do you feel your emotions? When I brush my hands against the bus seat, does it feel the same to me as it does to you? Do you like the bump, bump, bump of the canvas? I'm not sure how much I want to curl this leaf. Probably just a little more. Not too much. Not overdoing it. I tend to push shapes, give them more twists and turns, bumps and ridges, sharper edges. Gleams where there are none. Not to an egregious degree, I don't think, but to taste. Salt to taste, pepper to taste, turmeric to taste, cumin to taste, paprika to taste, oregano to taste, parsley to taste, basil to taste, cilantro to taste, paint to taste. There's supposed to be a ladybug on this leaf, but I think I'm just going to try to remember to put it in later, instead of carving it out with this base right now. Kind of want to put a small moon in here, but I think I'll hold off. I also kind of want to put outlines of stars instead of just these blocks, but I think I'll wait until the blocks are done to decide, so I can see how they look, compare it, make up my mind. I still have nail polish on my nails. Not sure how long ago I painted them. Maybe 2 weeks ago. They've all worn off on 1, 2, 3, 4, but the thumb is still stuck with flowers, and there's still bits of sparkle on the right hand. I used to paint my nails a lot as a kid. Not just weekly, it was pretty much daily. Sometimes I wonder if all the nail polish fumes did something to my brain. Maybe not. But I don't really have a way of knowing. I also think the same way about Sharpies. I used to use a lot of Sharpies, and I didn't really air out my room either. So it would just be me hunched in the corner at my desk, drawing with Sharpies for hours and hours. I've had a lot of different phases. I was using chalk pastels for a little bit. It was a birthday gift once. Also a charcoal phase for the same reason. Oil pastels that I found in a box in the house. that used to be my mom's when she was in college. I used to do a lot of watercolor. Sometimes what I do is I take a page and I brush the whole thing with color. I wouldn't have a plan for the page yet. I just wanted to texture it. And I'd soak the brush with a darker color, more saturated color. And I'd hit the brush against my finger and it would splatter all over the page. Speckling droplets everywhere. Like little brown dots on a blue egg. Sometimes it looks like an explosion, sometimes like raindrops, sometimes just as it was, a splatter. Or I guess freckles. I wonder, should I take this all the way to the edge, or should I let it fade out into dark? I think I'll let it fade just a little bit. Probably won't go as far with the second pass either, just because it's right next to a figure. I think we'll try a spiral here too. Same way. Same thing. And I'll move this a little closer. The star will be fine, don't worry about it. Think of it like a bug under a leaf. A bug under a wet log in the rainforest. Not a rainforest. I don't know if they have pill bugs in rainforests. Just a regular forest, I guess. It was snowing last night. I think I said earlier. But it's a little warmer now. Or maybe it's not warmer, maybe the house is just warm. Either way, there's rain dripping down my window. Spilling out the gutter, falling onto the roof. Chasing the sides of it. I used to have chickens. Well, I still have chickens, but I used to have a lot more a little bit ago. Maybe 2 years ago. Maybe 3. Not really sure. But we've had chickens since I think I was either 10 or 11. Because I'm fairly certain I was in 6th grade. But we got chickens. The little chicks that you hatch. Well, you don't hatch them, someone else hatches them. You get the little chicks from the chicken store, and then you raise them with a heat lamp with chips. little thing for feed, little thing for water. Clear out the wood chips every few days. But they're not exactly wood chips. That's a bit chunkier than they are. It's closer to wood shavings. I think they might have been pine shavings. I'm not really sure. But we raised chickens all the way from little baby chicks. Then we had them in the yard. Then we got more little baby chicks. Raised those and added them to the flock. And then, as they got older, instead of raising more chickens from itty bitty babies, what we started to do is we would adopt chickens. Oftentimes, people will raise chickens, but then, they get tired of it after some years, or maybe they have to move, or maybe they have kids now and they can't deal with it, or whatever it is, right? They'll be looking to get rid of their chickens. And so what we would do is we'd adopt them, off Facebook Marketplace, or through this one chicken lady who we knew. And, yeah. Kind of like adopting a dog. It's not that different. This one time, I think this is around the start of the pandemic, my mom, she didn't ask anyone, she just told us, we're getting 10 more chickens. And it's like, what? We're getting 10 more chickens? And, yeah, she and my dad left, and then they came back, and then there was just crates full of chickens. And I was like, oh, okay. The guys that we got the chickens from were magicians. Or maybe just one of them was a magician. I'm not really sure. But they were moving, and they couldn't take the chickens with. And I guess it is a little bit different from having a cat or a dog. Because when you have chickens, you have to have a whole setup, right? You need a backyard, and you need a coop, and a run, and everything that goes with it. The feed and the water, the fencing. So if you move with chickens, then you also have to move with all that infrastructure, which makes it a lot harder. Especially if you're going somewhere like an apartment, it's not really feasible. But yeah. So we had a bunch of chickens for a little bit. But then there were some fox problems. I used to be quite angry at foxes whenever I saw one for a while. Same way I get mad whenever I see a hawk. Before then, the only problems we ever had were hawks. Not often, but occasionally a hawk would swoop down and get one of our girls, But we didn't want to keep them inside all day, because what kind of life is that, But we also didn't want to let them out all the time because we didn't want them to be vulnerable. But we do have a bunch of bushes and trees and places for them to hide. And a lot of the time, even if a hawk did try to attack, it would be fine. But a lot of the time, we'd be out there with them, watching over them. Especially, there's like seasons for it, too. So, if we saw them swooping around the neighborhood, we wouldn't really let them out unsupervised. But until then, and by then I mean a few years ago, we'd never had a problem with foxes. But then one of them got one of them, and then we kept them in for a while, and we started letting them out again. And another one of them got another one of them. So we kept them in for a while, and we started letting them out again. And then one of them got like 7 of them, you know, just in one day. For no reason either. But it broke into one of the structures that we had. We hadn't even let them out. It just broke into one of the structures and took out a bunch of them for no reason, and then left. I'm not sure that it even ate anything. And I was quite angry for a while. To be honest, I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to forgive I almost said hoxes. I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to fully forgive foxes, but I'm not quite as mad as I was. It made me not want to get more chickens for a while, you know, because I didn't want to deal with more rounds of grief. But at the same time, if you go about life not collecting things for your heart in fear that it will break or anticipation of the day that it will, then you're just gonna have an empty heart, you know? Most joy comes at the cost of vulnerability. Love comes at the cost of being able to be hurt. But even if you try not to love, even if you try to desire, what's the word? Not defy, not define, not desire, deny. Even if you try to deny yourself attachment, you will still feel an ache. Although, I'm sure that maybe there's like 1 or 2 people out there who that doesn't apply to. So take it more as a rule of thumb. But most love is worth it. Though there is something to be said about time and place. Perhaps love in general, but not all. Or maybe just whether or not your soul can bear it on any given day. I definitely have times where I'm not ready to start again. Days, weeks. But I always come back to myself. And I always come back to the world. And my arms always reopen. I'm pretty happy with how it's going so far. I need more paint though. But I'm doing here is I'm scraping off a little bit of paint that's dripped over the nozzle. That way when I close it, there's not a ton drying out on the inside, getting it stuck or getting it wasted. Also, in case anybody's wondering what brand I'm using, not sponsored by the way. If it wasn't obvious, I'm not big enough to be sponsored, but that paint's just one that I got on discount. But it works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. There was a different time I got fabric paint on discount and it was absolutely awful. Even years later, it still hasn't dried right and it's tacky, sticky, smells kind of weird. I'm never buying from that brand again. But at the very least, it only cost a few dollars. I'm thinking that in the end, these stars will probably end up rainbow. Not sure how rainbow. If I want to do them pastel or saturated, but I guess I'll figure it out. The time comes when the time comes. Jumping back a little bit, the reason that I brought up chickens was that the other day my mom pulled up one of those slideshows, you know, like every few years your phone will be like, look back. It'll show you stuff from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago. And my mom showed me one of those, and there was a bunch of videos of the chickens. So it's just had me thinking about it. And there was also some videos of our old dog. His name was Ollie. He was a schnoodle. At least we think he was. We adopted, well, all dogs are technically adopted, but we got him from the shelter thing. It was a bunch of dogs from Texas, but they came all the way up to our state because I guess there's a stray dog problem in Texas or something like that. And they brought the dogs all the way to our state and had a little event where you could adopt the dogs, right? And you could see them online before you came to adopt them in person. And we already had a dog, but a fairly old one. He's 17 now. But we wanted to get a second dog, and we wanted it to be around the same age, same size, all that. So my mom picked out 3 online that we could go check out and go meet. And the first one that we saw was Ollie. It was the first one that we met. And the event was in the pouring rain. And it wasn't just a light rain. It was like pouring. It was heavy. It was rolling down our backs, running through our hair. Every person and every dog at that event was totally soaked. But it didn't really seem like anyone cared. I definitely didn't. And as soon as I saw Ollie and I got to hold his leash and walk him around, I was like, this is it. We're getting this one. And my mom was like, okay, don't you want to check out the other dogs? And I'm like, no, I don't need to. I don't want to. This is the one. And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, I'm sure. And so, we fill out the papers, we take him home. And on the ride back, he's sitting in my lap, and I'm feeding him a little piece of ham because my mom had a sandwich that she didn't finish earlier, just waiting in the car. He's a very sleepy dog. He's always taking a nap. So I guess that's true of pretty much all old dogs. He was short. He had white, curly fur. Very fluffy, very dense fur. Very dense dog. I'm pretty sure he was under 20 pounds, but he felt like 30, 40 when you picked him up. I remember he used to walk a little funny, but this one time I picked him up and I heard this little pop, and then it's like his back straightened out a little bit after that. I don't know. I guess accidental chiropractic. Chiropractor. He had the longest eyelashes too. Like they were long eyelashes. Like it was ridiculous. And my mom used to tell the groomers not to cut the eyelashes. And so by the time that his haircut was all done, he'd come back and it would look like he had extensions or something. Kept asking to let me ask the groomer to give him a mohawk. And eventually she was like, alright. I had a bit of a mohawk for a little bit. Not one of the ones where it gets glued up, when it's all straight and pointy, but just 2 shave sides. I used to be very experimental with my hair. I was one of those people who would cut and dye it themselves. And I'd do fancy little braids or funny little hair clips. I remember I really didn't care much back then. And sometimes I'd look at my hair that day and I'd be like, it needs to be different, or I was unhappy with something. So I'd go into the school bathroom with safety scissors and just adjust it to my liking. I guess I'm not that much different nowadays. I don't dye my hair and I don't do any crazy styles or anything, but if I notice my bangs are getting a little long, I'll just hop into the bathroom and clip them. I don't really section them off, I just kind of go for it. I gave myself a pixie cut some months ago. I already had one, but it had grown out quite a bit. Did a pretty good job. Now it's growing out again. And guess under normal circumstances it would be time for another haircut, but I've been thinking about growing it out. For the past few years, I've been in a perpetual cycle of anywhere between shaved head to bob, you know? Balder bob. And sometimes I'll tell myself that I'm gonna grow it out long for real this time, but it starts to hit my shoulders or touch the back of my neck, and then I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do this anymore. Most of the time I would just rather shave my head than brush my hair, but I've been feeling a little bit different about it lately. When I was younger, and by younger I mean elementary school through middle school, I used to wear a lot of pigtails. I guess even after high school, back when my hair was bob length, I did pigtails again. Although it was less of a pigtail, more of puffs, you know? Poof poof. Two little fluffy tufts sitting at the top of my head. Back when I used to work at a cafe, I would put my hair up in little buns at the top of my head, and I put skull bow clips in the front. I also had some pink streaks in my hair at the time. I was very into pink and black. My closet used to be all black. Well, not all black. It was black and gray. Come on, you gotta have some variety. But mostly black and gray and a little bit of white. But in the past few years, I've been going almost entirely just like anything new that I get's gotta be colorful. It's funny. When I was younger, I keep saying when I was younger, when I was little, like 3rd grade probably, I remember another kid asked me in line while we were waiting to leave the classroom and march into the hallway, and everyone stepped down to the cafeteria. Another kid in line asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up. And instead of saying veterinarian or astronaut, a baker, an artist, a mathematician, a coder, a dentist, a doctor, what I told this kid was I wanted to be a goth. And he gave me this bewildered look, like he looked horrified, like he looked like I said I wanted to be a serial killer or something. But I really didn't mind freaking out other kids, so I kind of felt pleased with myself in that moment. But I was just very into the look. I loved everything spooky. I loved everything dark. I loved the color black. It was my favorite color. Nowadays, I'm not sure what my favorite color is. It was bright yellow for a while. And I do really like pink. I really liked that sort of almost pastel cyan that you get from a robin's egg. Or almost cyan pastel. That's what it is. You get from a blue egg. A blue robin's egg. There we go. And burgundy, scarlet red, dark red, wine red used to be my favorite color to wear. I'm very fond of rainbows, but I prefer the more pastel-y kind, you know, or less conventional ones, like ones that are tinged purple. My favorite color was purple for a bit. Right now I'm thinking that it's gotta be either light pink or light blue. But I don't often wear pink. It doesn't look very good on me. It's something that I've had to reconcile with over the years. But blue definitely does. And though I don't wear much pink, a lot of the stuff in my room is pink. Alright. It's a lot of stars. Alright. It will be nice to have this skirt finally done. It's felt practically endless. I can hear my dog in the background. Probably means that my sister's home. They're pulling into the driveway. I guess now would probably be a good time to head off. I will see you guys next time. Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite. And if they do, bite them back even harder.